it certainly adds another sense to sight, and most of the people that I talk to, you can see a logo, but sound really helps you to feel a logo.
Welcome to Audio Branding, the hidden gem of marketing. Sound plays a more important role in human behavior and our decision-making than you may realize. In this podcast, I'll help you understand the art and science of sound so you can better influence others in business and your life. I'm your host, Jody Krangle. Let's delve a little deeper. This is the first part of my interview with Dr. David Allan. My next guest is Professor of Marketing at St. Joseph's University in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. He has a BA in Communications from American University, an MBA in Marketing from St. Joe's, a PhD in Mass Media and Communication from Temple University, and is currently pursuing a Master's in Legal Studies in Entertainment Law from USC. He's a prolific writer with 3 books, Supersonic Logos and This Note's for You, both on Business Experts Press and Hit Play. 3 book chapters having a lot to do with music, advertising, and marketing, 6 music case studies, along with multiple journal articles. He also has his 2 podcasts, Marketing Musicology and the NFT PhD. Before academia, he spent over 20 years in radio as a DJ, PD, and GM. His name is David Allan, and he definitely knows a thing or two about how to market with sound. Stay tuned, because you and I are both going to be schooled. As always, if you have questions for my guest, you're welcome to reach out through the links in the show notes. And if you have questions for me, visit audiobrandingpodcast.com, where you'll find a lot of ways to get in touch. Plus, subscribing to the newsletter will let you know when the new podcasts are available. And now, here's my interview with Dr. David Allan. Thank you so much for joining me, David. I know this has been a long time coming.
It's a pleasure being here.
I love to start off my interviews with a particular question because I love the stories that it brings out in people. So I'm going to ask you as well. Do you have an early memory of sound that moved you?
There was always sound in the house, of course, some good, some not so good, I bet. But my dad was into music pretty early on and would play vinyl. Steve Lawrence and Edie Gourmet and that kind of stuff. He wasn't a big Frank Sinatra fan, so I'm sure that was playing in the house, and I have some memories of that. My mom or my dad didn't sing to me, so I wish that's always a really good story, but I don't have it.
That's okay. It's your story. We're talking about your story.
I'm sure that, they were singing, hopefully they were singing happy birthday to me from an early age. But then I was a big radio person. So when I got old enough to make my own choices in the car or at home or at night in my room, it would have been a disc jockey, I'm sure. So
that's great. Yeah. Well, I know that you got into sound in what you're doing now. So what's your background in that, and what made you decide to get a PhD in marketing? Because that's going the full mile.
Yeah, it started with me being at a college in Virginia, Randolph-Macon College, and I thought I was going to be a high school history teacher, and I thought I was going to coach high school soccer. I wasn't playing. I got a C in American history. I was the social chairman at my fraternity, Theta Chi. Shout out to all those brothers. And Mom said, you need to either get better grades or get another plan. And literally I went back to my dorm room and said, okay, well, what do I like to do? And I was spinning records at the fraternity to save money because we didn't have band money. I was Disco Dave. And in late 77 and 78, and I said, I think I'll do that. And I transferred back to American University in DC and went into broadcast journalism, which was for serious journalists. and Derek McGinty from PBS, who did a couple of presidents, and Tony Perkins, who was on ABC News, and did weather there, I think, for a while on GMA. And but all I wanted to do was be a disc jockey. So fast forward, started overnights in Oxford, Ohio, did the disc jockey trail, Ocean City, Richmond, Virginia, Norfolk, Virginia, and then got fired in Richmond, got fired in Norfolk, and ended up in Philly at Power 99 FM.
When you
And
say fired, I'm just curious about this because I hear these kinds of stories from radio people all the time. Do you mean like they changed their format and they just didn't need you anymore, or like what happened?
well, if you haven't been fired, if you're in radio and you haven't been fired, you haven't been fired yet. So
Yeah.
it's a little bit like COVID, but that's another story.
Yeah.
And I did a bunch of years in Ocean City, Maryland, and I'm in black radio, urban contemporary. And I went to Richmond, and I thought they were going to change the format to more urban contemporary, which is actually it is now. And the owner had different ideas, so they let us all go. And after 6 months, and then I went to Norfolk, and they also were going to change the format. They were black music, younger black music then, and but the ratings, they fired me, and then to change the format, and then the ratings came out, and they were really good. And so they kept the format, but not me, because by then I was on the way to Philadelphia at Power 99, and had a good run, had good runs there. Really good people, really great town, really great music, met lots of great people. Became an operations manager and a VP of programming, where I traveled across the country, and I had really good markets like San Francisco and LA and Miami.
So you got to see all the behind the scenes stuff.
I did. I had little kids that my wife had to take care of. And at some point I was like, ooh, I really like this. It was really hard to leave, but once I got on the road, it was great for me. Evidently not so much for her, because she told me to stop telling her where I was eating and who I was meeting.
I can sympathize. Okay.
So the next step for me would have been a general manager. They wouldn't make me a general manager because I was a program director and I was a disc jockey, and salespeople are general managers. Program directors are not general managers. So I said, I'll show them. And
Who makes these rules?
Well, they were pretty prevalent for a while, that of, if you're not in sales, and, I was told many times, you spend money and they make money. And
I see. Okay.
I said, I'll show them. And I got an MBA, and they made me general manager, partly to get me out of Los Angeles, because I was not doing what they wanted me to do with the program director that was there, and they wanted her fired, and I wouldn't fire her. So became a general manager, had the MBA. And then as part of the MBA, I really thought about teaching again. And I told someone, and they told someone, and someone called and said, do you want to teach? I got an MBA in marketing. And do you want, because I'm a communication person, so that seemed close.
Sure.
And then so I got it's actually a pretty funny story, a not very bright man. And I've just mentioned to someone that I'd like to teach, and I got a call from a Holy Family University. It was Holy Family College then. And it was on a Monday night in September. And they said, I understand that you're a marketing professor. And I said, sure, that's what I am. And they said, well, come up and talk,
Okay.
come up and talk to us. And I go, okay, good, but don't come to my office. Meet me at classroom 200 at 6:30. Okay. And I get there, and there's the chair of the department. He hands me a textbook and a syllabus and says, this is your class. Good luck.
Oh, wow.
And
Okay.
I walked in and I said, you poor people,
Wow. Talk about trial by fire.
Yeah,
How did it go?
I'm sure it was awful for them,
Oh,
but
no.
I'm sure. But I ended up there a couple of semesters, so it wasn't too bad. And then I came back to where I am now, which is St. Joseph's University as an adjunct, and radio started getting. I made it all the way up to general manager, and then the general manager job went away. Certainly of a single station, I had two stations. They wanted me to be a market person, which was fine. But then they brought in their own market person. It started getting pretty squirrely. And I
Mm,
was like, well,
yeah.
maybe I should do this teaching thing full time. And I went to the dean of Dean J. Angelo at St. Joe's, and I said, so I think I'd like to be full time. And he goes, you have to have a PhD to be tenured. He goes, you could be a visiting, but it's only you know, a semester by semester gig. And I said, well,
Yeah.
how,
Okay.
how do you get one of those PhD things? He goes, it's a young person's game. He did not,
Order it over the internet.
he denies all of this now, but he says,
Okay.
it's a young person's game. And I go, and I'm not young. I was 38 at that time, 40,
Wow.
almost 40.
Okay. That
And he
seems like a
goes,
kid to me.
yeah, and he says, but we like you, and you can teach a course every semester. And I said, I think I'm going to look into this PhD thing. He goes, okay. And so he's right. It is a young person's game, but I found a part-time PhD program at Temple, which was um, mass media and communications. You could go part-time for 2 semesters, and then you had to commit. And so they didn't let me in the first year. There's a pattern in my life to tell me, if you want me to really do something, tell me no. or you,
I'm seeing the pattern. Yes.
or
Yeah.
you
But good for you for
or
persevering.
you can't.
Yeah.
And so I didn't get in, and I figured out that I could take the intro PhD course as a continuing learner. And I showed up in the class. And so the teacher was going through the roll, and she goes, sir, I think you're in the wrong place. And I go, nope. And she goes, this is the intro PhD candidate course. I go, I know. She goes, and you're on my roster. And I go, I know. She goes, that's funny. Let's talk afterwards. So she became
Okay.
a big mentor of mine, and it was so many funny stories. But we were walking out after class. She goes, well, what do you do? I go, well, I'm a general manager of a radio station. She goes, you probably make a lot of money. I go, I make a lot of money, but I'm not going to make it for a long time. And at some level, it's not going to be worth it. And she goes, you're not going to make a lot of money over here. I go, that's okay. My wife owns a daycare. We're good. And we got to the faculty parking lot where I paid to park. And in those days, we general managers were driving Jaguars. They gave us Jaguars to drive. And I was next to her car, which was a beater, like a really bad beater. And
Oh
she
boy.
goes, well, this is my car, and this is probably your car. And I go, it is my car.
Uh-huh.
And so anyway, so I did that, and fast forward, you have to, when you get a PhD, you have to have an idea to do a dissertation on. Something that, a dissertation is kind of, as I was told, is like a relay race, and you need to take the baton and take it a lap. And so I was like, wow, what should I do? What do I like? And I was trying to bridge my old life with my new life. And Sting had just done a Jaguar commercial for Desert Rose. And there was some publicity with it, and it had popular music and advertising. And I was like, wow, that's what I'll do. And so I did my dissertation on popular music and advertising, and was allowed to sort of bridge the gap between my old life and my new life, and still use all of that research, all of that now. So
Yeah, I'll bet you do. And it's only becoming more and more in the media sort of area. Like it's becoming more and more of a thing.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much to the people that have taken the time to leave an honest review of this podcast. I know it takes a bit of effort to do, and I know how busy and, let's face it, kind of stressful our lives are right now. So it means a lot that you take the time to leave some feedback. Ran MCK writes, "How important is sound?" Jody covers all frequencies of sound through her research and her guests. Her interviews with Tal and Hamish provide insight on how audio can be heard, not just listened to. Jody's voice keeps you listening and want to hear more. I have become a better listener. Thank you, Ran MCK. I really appreciate your kind words. Now, back to the show.
So I know you wrote a book on this as well, right? You wrote a book called Supersonic Logos.
Yeah. Well, the first book was This Note's for You, and I wrote it, and I put my 20 favorite commercials with music in it, and Sting was in that, and
Yeah.
I use that in my class. I teach a music marketing class, and I use that in my class. And then when COVID was starting to hit, and I was spending a lot of time at home, I was like, maybe I should do another book on audio logos, and audio branding was getting a lot of attention then, and then smart speakers were getting a lot of attention. So I was like, well, maybe this is the next thing for me. And the way I write these books, I try to talk to someone connected with every chapter. So it has to be the artist, the brand, somebody that was in the studio, and everybody was home, and everybody had a lot of time to talk.
The perfect time to ask for interviews. Yes. I read the book, so it is really fascinating to hear what they have to say. Yeah.
And even some of the people, like John Williams, wouldn't talk to me because he felt like he had just talked too much about Jaws, and he was very cordial about it. He goes, there's so much stuff out there. I don't think that I have anything new to offer. And I talked to Mike Post for the Law and Order, cha-ching, and they were friends. And he goes, "Oh, I'll talk to John." And then he came back and he says, John just doesn't want to talk about it anymore. He's just tired of talking about it. And I was like, it's fine.
Do you think that's a bit of imposter syndrome? I mean, like, because he is worth all that. Like, I don't know why he wouldn't want to.
Yeah, I don't know. And I use, there's plenty of stuff out there where Steven Spielberg talks about him and at things. And, I bought the rights to an interview that somebody did with him that asked primarily the same questions I ask. I'm kind of like you. I try to get something that, like your question of what's the first time you can remember hearing sound. I always ask, what's the one funny or unusual story that no one knows about this music and advertising or audio logo or something like that. And they do come up with stuff when people are forced to be original. They can be. So
sure.
That's how
it's a fascinating topic. I mean, I do a whole podcast on it.
I know. I mean,
over 100 episodes now. It's not ending.
You're crazy. You're crazy. 100 and counting.
It's a lot of fun, though. I am finding that I am definitely learning something new every time I talk with someone. So every time that I have a new guest on, I'm learning. And I find it fascinating. It's a fascinating subject, which I'm sure is why you decided to get a PhD in it.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of. I'm a perpetual learner, and I'm highly intellectually curious, more curious than intellectual. But I find myself learning from everyone I talk to in the audio branding space that I didn't know before. So I'm a big fan of it.
Well, getting back to the whole sonic logos thing, what do you think the use of it is good for? What do you think it particularly takes care of? What does it do for us?
Yeah, I mean, it certainly adds another sense to sight, and most of the people that I talk to, you can see a logo, but sound really helps you to feel a logo. And so that sort of reinforces, the idea that we're not using uh, enough of our senses on a regular basis. And audio is a funny thing. You probably see this stuff that audio is back and audio is bigger than ever. I'm like, audio's always been big.
Yeah, it never went anywhere.
It needed, I think it's somewhere it needed a PR campaign here and there
Yes.
to
Yeah.
remind people that it was, I think it's more important than sight, but not surprising that I think that. But
We're a little
I
biased.
know.
Just a touch.
It does allow brands, especially, or shows or movies, to really have a deep dive on a person's um, total integration of whatever they're doing into every sense possible. And you've seen the research out there that can sound accentuate taste, and all of that kind of stuff, and it's just fascinating to me, and continues to be fascinating to me. So.
Yeah. I spoke with Steve Keller in one of my earlier interviews. He's the Sonic Strategy Director over at SXM Media. So Pandora and
Steve's the
Steve
man.
Keller?
Yeah. He is the man.
Yeah.
talked to
So he's fantastic. He blew my mind regularly in that interview. I was amazed.
Yeah.
But he talks a lot about how you can influence what you taste by what you hear. And they did a whole campaign for Propel back in the before days
Yeah.
through Studio Resonate, which I guess is the studio advertising agency through SXM. And yeah, they were watching people as they were listening to something in their headphones and tasting this drink and, dialing in how much sweet or salty they wanted, and amazed at the fact that it was actually changing taste. And it's amazing. Our brain works together. All our senses work together. And it's a really fascinating study on how very strange our brains are.
They are, and pretty underdeveloped.
Yes.
With what we require them to do. I know that I say all the time, "You're making my head hurt," but it's probably because of something that I've done over and over again, and the new stuff never hurts your head. So it's and Steve, he speaks to my class every semester, and
Oh, great.
he's the real deal. I met him through the audio branding people in Austria, Germany, where it is.
Yeah. That would be We Sound.
Yeah.
Would that be?
Yeah. What do they call that? I'm drawing a blank on the name of that organization.
Oh, the Audio Branding Academy.
Yeah, the Academy.
is-
That's how I.
Yeah.
And-
I interviewed them as well, actually.
Yeah.
So Steve is, I think, episode 19 and 20.
Wow.
And I can't remember which. Cornelius
Yes,
is
yeah.
later on, but Cornelius and Lars Ollendorf, I believe,
Right.
is the music guy over at We Sound. And yeah, they were fantastic too. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just there's so much to learn. But going back to almost the Jaws discussion, in the book, I know that you mentioned that they turned off the sound while watching that film, and it was almost comical.
Y-
And then you turn the sound back on, and the reaction is visceral.
Yeah. It's and Spielberg gives John Williams like crazy amount of credit for the audio selling that movie, because it's a mechanical shark that really doesn't look like a shark.
We don't even see it until almost the end of the film, right?
Yeah. And it really makes the movie. And I in my class, my students, I do turn off the sound on that also. And I use Titanic, where if you don't hear that music when she's having the dream, do you get the experience from the movie without the music and that kind of stuff? And it really brings it home. There's plenty of research out there about scary movies and that kind of stuff, that they wouldn't be as scary. They're not as scary without the sound.
Oh, yeah.
It's the,
Yeah.
the build up and that kind of stuff that leads you to anticipate being frightened. So,
And trailers too. I mean,
mhm.
trailers work the same way. If you're going to get that kind of experience from a trailer, the sound is so important, and it can change the entire feel of that trailer and make you think it's a completely different movie.
So important. I know.
Yeah.
It's all it. I think that the people that realize that have been able to maximize that, and continue to maximize that. I think that's why, it's seemingly getting better every day.
Yeah, so true. So, who do you think needs a sonic identity as far as companies are concerned?
Well, most of the people that I talk to that are in the business think everyone needs one.
Yeah.
And then they're very quick to point out that they shouldn't, they shouldn't have one if they think it's just a logo.
Well, you can't half-ass it.
Yeah.
You just can't. It's a lot of money to spend on something that isn't going to do what you want it to do then, and then you just think the whole thing failed.
Yeah, I know. But the people that are in the space, like Steve and Joel Beckerman at Man Made Music, and a lot of them and a lot of the people in the book that came up with logos and that kind of stuff, they just, they think that it just adds so much to the brand, on another level, that they'll never get from seemingly just sight or experience in using the product or service. MasterCard, big fan of Raja at MasterCard and the things that he's done with, sonic branding at MasterCard, is, it works really well. It works really well, but it works really well when the consumer can experience it as part of a transaction. And so it's a no-brainer to think that it would work. You see commercials with Apple Pay and that kind of stuff, and you hear a sound, and it's reaffirming because it worked. It's branding because the person next to you wonders what you have that they don't have. So there's a little FOMO there. And it's something that other credit cards in this case don't have. So, what's not to like about it? I mean, we have music on hold, sometimes
Hmm.
not very good music, but that seems to keep us occupied for a minute or two. And
I have this discussion with a lot of people when I'm on other podcasts. I say, look, if you're on hold music, if you're a high-end jewelry store and you have an on hold that's 80s hairband music, that's wrong. That's just wrong.
yeah, I do like the people that have put some thought into it.
Yeah.
But and then plenty of research out there that the type of music in a waiting room either makes the waiting seem longer or shorter.
Oh, good point. Yeah.
So music's all around us, and utilizing it in new and exciting capacities, is the way to go. And the smart speaker, certainly helps with people getting it, understanding that, oh yeah, there's some audio there. And it's in
Well,
my
how do you
house.
differentiate yourself if all you're doing is hearing it?
Yeah.
Right? That's it. That's all there is.
It's true. I know. And so they're the ones that are doing it, like Steve Keller and Raja at MasterCard and that kind of stuff. They're going so deep into the entire, and then a lot of them are getting into health. Walter
Oh,
Rizal,
yeah.
who did the Intel, and Joel Beckerman and Steve, to a certain extent, are looking at, sounds in hospitals and how unnerving all that is when buzzers are going off, and it's, it's being ignored a lot of times by the hospital staff because they've heard it too much. It's making the patient, feel tremendous amount of anxiety.
Are you looking for ways to improve your company's or podcast's impact? You'd be surprised how powerful the use of an intentional audio branding strategy can be. Want to know more? I have a free downloadable PDF that gives you my 5 tips for implementing an intentional audio strategy at voiceoversandvocals.com/audio-branding-strategy. That location does ask to put you on a mailing list, just to send you updates on when the new podcasts come out. But if you really don't want to give your email out, I understand. Just contact me directly. My email is all over my website, and I'll make sure you get that PDF without needing to sign up anywhere. If you do sign up, though, you also get access to a resources section called The Studio, where I have videos, white papers, and PDFs, discounts from my guests, and snippets of audio from my guests that no one else gets to hear. So maybe it's worth your while. Totally up to you. And of course, if you're looking for voiceovers, you can get in touch with me about that too. Now, back to the podcast. I have a fellow coming on, actually, in the podcast that's coming out Wednesday, a fellow named Michael Schutz, and he does work specifically at McMaster University, I believe, in helping to make the hospital alarms and beeps less annoying.
Mm-hmm.
I think he said that his mother-in-law, who's a nurse, called it a beeping hellscape.
That's great.
It's a fun interview, and he had a lot of really interesting things to say. And most of them were that the quick cutoff of that sound is what is the most jarring. If you give it a little bit of decay, then it actually makes it more soothing than I mean, soothing would be going far, but
Yeah.
but at least more tolerable. And he's a percussionist,
Yeah.
so he kind of lives in that world. It was a really interesting discussion, but yeah, I totally get that healthcare is a big thing as far as sound is concerned. Yeah,
It could be it could be so much more soothing. I mean, if I'm on a machine and I stop breathing, I want drums and, electric guitar louder than it can ever be, and some kind of massive buzzer and lights flashing and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But, if it's just sort of it's all good in here, a little smooth jazz, would be great, to let me know
It would
that,
be nice.
and I could sort of sleep to that. So, and then I think it's fascinating that they have to add sound. They're adding sound to electric cars because
Yes,
it's unsafe.
the Leaf.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the Nissan Leaf, they actually made a playlist so you could play it in the car for your kids so you could get them to go to sleep.
Yeah. Yeah. And
It's really fascinating.
it's totally unsafe because if you can't hear the car coming, people are getting hit, and they need it to make a sound, whereas it wouldn't make a sound. And then we get used to sounds, inside of cars, and most of them are not good, because it signals that something's wrong usually, or that the temperature is 37 degrees.
Well, the rumble of the car is what put kids to sleep,
Yeah.
right? So that's why they made a playlist for it, so you could play it inside the car so that the kids would be soothed.
That's the best.
But-
That's the best.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, you have to think outside the box to do that. So good on Nissan,
Yeah.
But yeah, there's all sorts of things, like the way that a car door slams in a high-end car is different than it does in a lower-end car.
Yep.
Or even things like the Snapple pop. Like, they're figuring out how to make that happen on plastic bottles
Yeah.
because it's so characteristic of their brand.
Yeah. It's so funny. We did talk about that. A student actually brought that to me, as part of, we have an article assignment like everybody else does, and he did it on Snapple, and how that, he misses the glass bottle and the snap cap, but his mom, surprisingly, was fine with it because the plastic was, safer and easier to transport and that kind of stuff. So we got into a huge discussion about him wanting the
Yeah.
Snapple cap. He goes, "Well, I grew up on that cap. This is a 20-year-old. I grew up on that cap." I go, "Oh, okay." And he goes, "And I want it. I want to hear it. And that's why I buy it." And he goes, "The soda doesn't taste as good, not because it's not out of glass, but because it doesn't make that pop." And
Interesting.
I'm like, "Wow, you're getting too deep for me for a college kid." I'm going to have
Well,
to.
so it really does. Like what we hear really does influence what we taste. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah. And Coca-Cola figured that out long ago. I mean, that,
Oh yeah.
um, all that goes with the Coke bottle, and I'm a huge Coca-Cola audio branding fan, and all that they've
Hmm.
done. And, they started with a bottle, so that it was sight, trademark the bottle, all that kind of stuff. And then the sound of the carbonation and that kind of stuff, you know,
The pouring of and the
yeah.
fizzing and yeah.
So and it really does that it's the total experience that, even hearing, if you go to a soda fountain and you hear that, or you go to a Wendy's or somewhere and you fill up your own drink, that sound it creates great anticipation of that this is a carbonated fountain drink that I haven't had in a very long time. And I remember when I was little and I had one of these and blah, blah, blah. So
Yeah.
it matters.
So how did they translate that into their sonic logo, into their sound?
Well, Coca-Cola put it as part of, of what then led to their strategy in music, which is, they have those commercials where it's just the sound. You see the bottle and it's great animation and that kind of stuff. But their logos always took into consideration the sound of the cap opening, and then the sound of what soda might sound like pouring. So that was always key to, of anything they were doing at Coca-Cola. And then they were always big music people and have a big music strategy too, of trying to create new stuff and all that kind of stuff. So
And why, because I'm curious about this, why did they think that a particular song would do this for them as opposed to a sonic brand, like an audio all over thing, as opposed to, it just seemed an interesting switch that happened at a certain point in advertising where they were going after popular songs as opposed to creating audio brands.
yeah, so Coke versus Pepsi. I mean, it's hard to talk about one without the other. Coca-Cola wanted to create either find original artists and expose them to the world promotionally, or to get other artists and have them come in and do, they had Motown come in and redo songs and put out that kind of stuff. With the Coke brand, with the Diet Coke brand, they decided to go the Pepsi way, which is get the hot artists of the time. So that, Whitney Houston did a Diet Coke commercial with her music in it. And then Pepsi on the other side still really wants to get the hottest artist and have them, brand, co-brand the music with the soda, and they're consistent in that. It doesn't make one better than the other. And Pepsi halftime is huge now, which is just a further extension of that audio branding strategy. Coca-Cola, depends on who was there at any given time, would ebb and flow of what's, always wanting to be cutting edge and what's next. We've done this and maybe we should do that. And so that I think that it's the same way that popular music and advertising sort of ebbs and flows with logos and with jingles. And if you get saturation in one, then it's marketing people. So they go, okay, well, let's not do that anymore. Let's do something completely different. Let's do this. And then if it's successful, then people jump on that. It's, in the record industry, somebody gets a boy band, and then every label has to have a boy band, and then they get a cappella boy band, and then they get a girl a cappella girl band. And, it's just kind of, you see what's successful, but somebody has to do something first, and then everybody ends up following. And Coke gets high marks for going first on a couple of things, on many things audio.
This has been part 1 of our interview. I hope you'll tune in next week for part 2. Well, that's the end of this episode. Thanks for listening. And if you like what you heard, why not tell a friend about this podcast? It's available in all the usual locations. Until next time.